Today, we will be going over outlining. In public speaking, we outline instead of write papers. I think that we all have realized from our first couple speeches how imperative it is to not have everything written out in front of you in block formation or in that standard paragraph form or in a written essay format. And why don't we like to write things out in essay formats or in block formation or in chunks of information on a piece of paper when we're delivering a speech? Any ideas? Yeah?
It's too hard to find what you want to talk about?
Absolutely. It's super hard to find what you're talking about. And when we write in block formation, it reminds us a bit of English class, right? And in English class, typically we're looking to fill, sadly, page requirements, or we're looking to fill detail beyond that of what is typically needed in order to build out for required purposes. In this case, why we don't like to have that block formation as well is that that type of writing can often fulfill a lot of different filler information and put that filler information in that doesn't have a lot of purpose and that can oftentimes distract the audience rather than help them from or to achieving the understanding that you need them to. So it is different from English in the sense that instead we use outlines. Outlines aren't something that are used as a brainstorming tool, but instead it's used as the tool that we deliver with. So as you can see on the handout in front of you, outlining in public speaking serves two main purposes. And the first purpose is for the issue of organization, and the second purpose is for the issue of delivery. And if we think back to what I've been saying this entire semester, our purpose in this basic public speaking class is to get you organized and to help you to become an effective deliverer of your speech, to make that speech come to life, to have it be a natural extension of you so that you can deliver in an extemporaneous way. And with an outline, that both of those goals are accomplished. So as you can see here, there are two different outlines that we are going to go over. And these two different outlines are going to be used for both your informative and your persuasive speeches coming up. The first outline that is written on there is what we call a preparation outline. So a preparation outline, and outlines in general, both the preparation and the speaker's outline, which is going to be the second type of outline that we talk about. The preparation outline's purpose is for us as an audience, for us as speakers, to get what we call a visual framework. So I'm going to write that down, a visual framework. Of our ideas. So what does a visual framework mean? Well, it means that I can see exactly where this speech is going. I can see where ideas are supported or maybe where they need additional support. I can see how my concepts are laid out. And that visual framework allows me to see my speech in totem rather than looking at it as this chunk of information that I'm not really sure where it's going or what ideas support which other ideas. So that visual framework helps us. Additionally, this preparation outline or this visual framework is what every other speaker uses when they deliver speeches. So when you think about public speaking, we oftentimes think of it as a very unique experience or something that only we have to do in college and then we don't have to go about doing these outlines again. Well, in fact, all speakers, even professional speakers, speak from these speakers' outlines. Why? Because, one, it's a great way to organize and deliver your speech, and we found it to be the most effective way. But two, it is a standard that everybody can understand. So much like we have that MLA or APA format, have you used that before? Right, the MLA or APA format is done for the purpose of the reader so that they can best understand, so that they know what a reference looks like, so they know how to look for those particular references, so that it's organized in a flow that makes sense to the reader, something that we've psychologically studied for years and years to find out how you best understand information. The same thing happens with outlines. So know that if you were to go from this class to another public speaking class to a public speaking event outside of this campus or for your future, maybe even in your work, individuals who know how to speak are going to be using a, get it?
Outline?
There we go, an outline, absolutely. So they're going to be using these outlines as well. So it's a standard that's set. So we want to get in the or get it used to using these types of outlines. This is the outline, the preparation outline, this first one here, that you are going to turn into me. We've been talking this semester which speeches must have an outline. Well, here it comes, the informative and the persuasive, and you're going to be turning in an outline to me. These outlines are worth 50 points each, so it's important in your total grade for you to get the outline down as much as you can, and for you to make it effective and for you to follow the guidelines or the directions that I've given you. The directions that I've given you and the requirements that are listed on this page are what you'll be graded on. But this, again, isn't for you to necessarily jump through a hoop so that I can cross off patterns and, oh, look, they didn't indent properly, so -5. That's not really what I'm looking to do. Yes, I want you to have indents correctly, and yes, I want you to use proper patterns of symbolization, but ideally, this outline, if we can get it down, you know that you can take this anywhere, and it's a great set standard. So that's what we're evaluating you on, to make sure that you have this before you go out into the omnious real world, right? So in the other reason that we use this preparation outline, and as we get into some of the requirements, you will start to see it. We have a preparation outline. Well, let me go through some of the rules and requirements of the preparation outline so that you can understand our last reason as to why we use it. But what is the preparation outline? Other than being a visual framework, if you want to write down on your paper, it is everything that the speaker intends to say in a presentation. And this is the key here. Intends. What do I mean by intends? Everything that the speaker intends to say. What's intention? Any idea will do. What you have already starts with a P, ends with a land. Plan. Yeah, so what you prepared, what you planned. This is everything that you have written down on your paper before you come into class. That's what you need to write down. It's every single thing that you intend to say when you are in front of the audience. And if you don't say everything that you intend to say, no, I'm kidding. You don't. Why would it not be a huge deal if we didn't say everything that we intended to say? Think about an audience. Is it always homogeneous? Is it almost always homostasis? Is everything always perfectly as you intended it to go? No! There are live wires in your audience at all times. You never know who's going to be there, right? We don't know what's going to happen with technology. We don't know what's going to happen with an audience member. When we say intends, this is ideally what you want to get out. However, when we speak, we know that our audience may give us looks like so. And when they give us these looks that they are maybe confused, should we just brush right by that, being good speakers? If our intent is to get our message across, if they're giving us a face like they're confused, what do? If your friend was giving you a face like they were confused, as you were giving a story about what you did this weekend, would you just let them sit there with that face? You'd say what?
You seem confused.
You seem confused. Let me say it in a
Different way.
Let me give you an additional example. Let me say this in a way that may make more sense to you. That is probably not going to be written down because you didn't have the intention to say it. However, we never know what's going to happen, so you may need to add in information. You may see that I give you a 5-minute time warning, and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm only on main point 2. What am I going to do? Well, then you start dropping things. And although you intended to say other things, there wasn't time, or time didn't permit itself. So know that, ideally, it's everything that you intend to say. This goes back to our concept of the real world. Imagine it. You were getting ready to pitch the biggest presentation to a company that you're trying to acquire. Who knows? This is in your big, right, in the future. The night before, you have something called the stomach flu. You cannot go to your presentation the next day. If you are the only individual and all your information is right here, what would you have to do? Could you go to that presentation? No, you couldn't do it. And so you'd have to cancel. And this could potentially ruin your entire opportunity to acquire this company. But if you have a preparation outline, a visual framework with everything that you intended to say in your presentation written down, ideally, you could pass that off to any other person and they could what? Deliver it exactly as or with the content that you intended it to be. Does that make sense? And so having something in advance written out protects you as well as prepares you. And so it's important to do this as well. We never want to be stuck because we hold all the information. And if somebody is a seasoned speaker, they'll be able to take that visual framework and run with it. Sound good? So let's look at some of the rules. Let's look at some of the rules and some of the guidelines, if you look at your paper here, that you are going to want to hit in your preparation outline. If you look at the sample outline that is in your packet, or for those of you in my online class, you can look at it in the content item. It will lay out the different, or it'll give you a couple sample outlines. You'll be able to see all of these guidelines, number or A through G, laid out for you so that you're able to see exactly what your outline should look like. So here's what you're going to be graded on. We are going to have an MLA or an APA format. Are any of you familiar with an MLA format? Do you know how headings work on an MLA format? Okay, let's go over it real quick. If you are using an APA style, which many of you, unless you're a comm major or a psychology major, you're probably not using the APA. But please note that up here in the top, you'll do a header with your page numbers. So you'll always add your last name with the page number. So each number will be done in proper format. And then you are going to have 4 things over here. You're going to have, so you're going to have your name. And then you're going to have what? Good. So then you'll put your professor's name, Professor John Doe, say. And then you're going to put the class, so you'll put communication, and do it in full. Don't do do communication 11, or whatever the name of your class is. And then you're going to do the date. But the date is written in format that is done pretty much everywhere else in the world, and also in MLA format. When we learn to write our dates in elementary school when we're younger, we write it in a certain formation. In MLA style, it is 6 October 2015. So in turn, we have the date, the month, and then the year. And then the only other thing that you need to write here is a catchy title. So those are the things that you are going to come up with in an MLA format. Does this make sense to y'all? So this will repeat on each page. Make sure that the font is the exact same. Speaking of font, in MLA format, what type of font do we use?
Roman.
Yeah, Times New Roman for sure. short, so it's times new, and it's Roman. And then how many inches on each margin?
1.
1. Good, 1-inch margins. And then the final thing is you are going to want to use 12-point font. These are all standards for reading and for clarity purposes. Does this APA format make sense to you all? And something that you think you can do? Fantastic. All right, that being said, we can go on to the other requirements that you are going to need. As it says there on your handout, the first thing that you are going to need to label is your general purpose, your specific purpose, and your thesis statement. This will be at the top, and it will be after your catchy title. So the general purpose, you'll list out for us in one simple line, the specific purpose, and then your thesis statement. And then you'll put the catchy title. Oh, sorry, that falls below the catchy title of your speech. So make sure that you're listing those at the top for our audience and for the reader to know what this speech's purpose is. The other thing that you want to do is label. You are going to label your introduction. You will label your transitions. You will label the body of the speech, and then you will label your conclusion. The same way it can be done as introduction. Transition. So each of your transitions will be done, and so on and so forth. So make sure that you're labeling each of those so that we can see where they fall. The next thing that I want to talk about is using a consistent pattern of symbolization and indentation. This is going to be key for an outline. Oftentimes people, when they outline, they use symbols like bullet points or boxes or stars. Have you seen this before? Here, I'll put a bullet point and then I'll write a note. We get this because we've done a lot of PowerPoint probably in our life. And PowerPoint loves to organize your concepts and ideas by bullet points or boxes or a star. But unfortunately, to the average reader, we don't understand what a box or a star or a dot means. In outlining, we have a particular use of symbols and indentation to indicate new ideas. And that's what these symbols mean. So if we think about it, a symbol, something that represents something else. What a minute, that's crazy. This is a symbol. In context, if I was in front of the United Nations and I had just given a speech, you all would assume that this symbol was what? Yes, it was something that represented something else. If you ask a small child how old they are, and they'd say this, now it means what?
2.
2. Thus, something that represents something else. In outlining, for the purpose of speaking, we have a set of symbolic representation, aka symbols, that are going to mean something else. They stand for something else. And what do they stand for? Well, they stand for new ideas. Your pattern of symbolization is going to indicate to the person who is looking at your paper what that symbol stands for, what this entire sentence means, how it connects to the other ideas. So let's take a look at the symbolic framework. We will use a consistent pattern, starting with numbers, then going to letters, then going to numbers, then going to letters, then going to numbers. So we use an alternating number-letter pattern to let ourselves as well as our readers know where these new ideas are going. All of you will be using, to start off, Roman numerals. Your Roman numerals in your outline communicate your main points. All of you have main points. They're the things that are the how in your thesis statement, right? It's the way in which we will talk about whatever our speech is about. And so each of your main points are going to be represented by Roman numerals. For your informative and your persuasive speech, you will have between 1 and 5 main points. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 main points. Does this make sense to you thus far? So even if you were to think about it and organize the speech that you're working on right now, you know what your main points would be, what they would be symbolized by, yes? Mm-hmm. Okay. After we have our main points, we know that those main points can't stand on their own, right? Today I'll tell you about my family. So do that family. Now what do we need to do? We need to what? Describe and explain that. Say it with me. Family. Good job, everybody. Now we need to describe that family, but how are we going to do so? Well, we need some type of symbolic representation to do it. Thus, we start to build out the concept of our family. So we know that the main point needs support. It needs additional information. It needs some help. It maybe needs an example, a statistic, a story, a testimony. So let's give that a place to be. When I say proper pattern of symbolization and indentation, we mean tabbing over or indenting underneath the first letter of the last sentence. And we do this, why, do you think? Go back to the concepts at the beginning as to why we use this in the first place. 1, to organize. Good. But also, when you are delivering a speech, what is this indentation going to help you with? Being able to
find what you want to talk about.
Find your spot and find the flow without having to search through a paragraph, without becoming lost when you're trying to look through a huge bulk content of information. So we use a pattern of indentation to let us know that this is a new idea, coupled with the symbolization that also lets us know it's a new idea. Letter A, because if we're going number, letter, A's, or capital letters in this case, so it could be an A, and a B, and a C, and a D, all capital letters communicate or mean that this is a subpoint. A subpoint, what does sub mean? Means sub, like a submarine or a subordinate. Those are things that are
beneath.
Yes, beneath or below, right? So that's what sub means. Sub, below the main point. And since there's one sub, we know that it falls below this main point. Does that make sense to y'all? So all of your subpoints are going to be indicated by these capital letters, and they're going to fall below the main point. But sometimes the subpoint needs help. Sometimes the subpoint needs explanation. Sometimes the subpoint may need an outside source to support it. So we need to go on further, right? Yes, okay, good, thank you for that. So if we've used a number, and now we've used a letter, what are we going to use to indicate our next idea? Another letter? No. We are going to use a
number.
Yay! Okay, good. A number. Fantastic. So the A needs support, so we indent it right underneath the last letter of the last sentence, and we indicate this with a 1. Now we're using a number. It's a new symbol, meaning another new idea. And since it's indented 2 below, I know that this is a sub-point. The sub-point's job is to support the sub-point, which is used to support the main point, which is all used to support the central idea. Scream it, because you are right. Idea. Fantastic. But the sub-point needs help. It needs backup, friends. So where do we go from here? We use another what?
Symbol.
Yeah! Because we have another idea. It needs support. So it's support, if you will. So we'll indent one more time, right underneath that last letter. And now we are going back to letters. But we can't use capitals because capitals have already been used. Capitals indicate the subpoint. Small letters are the subpoints. And the subpoints' jobs are to support the, everybody with me?
Subpoint.
Good, which is used to describe the?
Subpoint.
Which is used to describe the?
Main point.
Which is all used to support the?
Central idea.
Yay! Fantastic. What if we need to keep going? Oh my gosh, get crazy with it. Well, we have a letter, number, letter. Now we need a number, right? But Amanda, I only know how to write one number. That's crazy town. All right, team, don't worry. There are other ways, because if we have Roman numerals that are big, we also have Roman numerals that are small. Yes, absolutely. So we use small Roman numerals. So your lowercase i's and v's, and x's if you decided to go that far, but I don't encourage it, would be to indicate your next point. So I'm going to put a little I here, and instead of writing it all out, I'm just going to write sub to the 4th point. So if you go down this far, this is describing, so the sub to the 4th is describing the sub-point, which is describing the sub-point, which is then describing the sub-point, which is working to describe the main point, which is all in turn working to support the central idea. Fantastic. Amanda, we need to go a little bit further. All right, kids, get crazy. Now you're going to start to use double letters. Okay? I doubt that we will go past this. So 5-minute speech. We don't need probably that much detail and information, but note that you will continue to alternate as the time goes on. Your computer is not going to want to symbolize like this. Have you ever tried to symbolize in a way? You're like, I'll put a 1, and then it tabs it over, and you're like, it's putting a little I. Do not spend your entire 6 hours of working on this speech working on formatting. If you go to the top of your word, you all are very familiar with this crazy thing called Google. You could Google how to say stop automatic formatting. But what we also could do is if you go up to the top, format, you'll hit like stop automatic numbering, and that's how you can do it in your Word document. If you're working in a Word program that's a bit newer, there will be, the second that you start to outline, a dialog box will typically pop up with an arrow next to it. Click on this dialog box and it'll say something like stop automatic numbering. Click on that and it will take off that format that automatically does it for you, and it will allow you to format and tab as you see fit. Does that make sense? Does it? No. Yes, but does it for you?
Kind of.
Okay, what's a little bit confusing? Are we talking about format? You know does that make sense when I say formatting? Like on your paper, how your paper will automatically format for you oftentimes?
Yeah, but...
And it'll give you symbols that you don't want. Sadly, your automatic word formatting is different from the formatting that we use in this class and that people use to do speeches. Thus, you have to go against the standard grain that's already set up for you in a Word document. And so stopping the automatic formatting will allow you to add in a 1 or an A or a B wherever you want to, rather than having it dictate it for you. Because Word or the computer program thinks it knows better how to outline. So you have to say, no, you don't. I'm going to stop this. Sound good? Okay. This is the format and the indentation that we'll be using for the purpose of these preparation outlines, as well as for your speaker's outline. You're going to use the same pattern there. But let's move forward, and I'm going to skip over D for right now, but let's move on to E. Everything must be written in full sentences. When people think about outlining, they oftentimes think about writing just key words that make sense to only who? The
speaker.
Yeah, to the speaker. That's what the speaker's outline is for. That's what your own notes are for. If we're thinking about the preparation outline, something that has to be handed off to somebody else, I don't know what you're trying to say unless you write it in a full, complete sentence. So ideally, every single thing that you write is going to be written in a full sentence for the preparation outline. Is that clear? Great. The next item down here on F is that you want to double space between each symbol or point. That means that you will double space between each symbol here. And you can see that reflected in your packet or in your sample outline. But each idea itself will be single-spaced if it goes longer than that line itself. But then once you go in between the symbols themselves, that is where you will double space. So make sure that you're double spacing in between each symbol. And the last thing that I want you to notice is G. For every sentence, there is a new symbol. That means every time you put a period, an exclamation point, or a question mark, an ending punctuation, you start a new symbol. When you are writing, that is the easiest way to go about to outline. Note that every single time you put a period, you know that you're going to double space and start a new symbol, depending on if that idea supports the one above or perchance it's a new idea altogether. So we'll go through this and I'm going to actually put words attached to it. But for the point of this, does it make sense that every time you put an ending punctuation mark, you're going to start a new symbol? Why is this? Well, if we think about it, if each symbol represents a new idea, we can't have 4 to 5 sentences under one symbol because how many ideas are represented? 4 to 5. That's 4 to 5 ideas. And so each symbol is a new idea. Thus, every time you put an ending punctuation mark, end that idea and start a new idea. Yes? Or no? Okay, awesome. That being said, the last thing on there said that you needed to have a catchy title, which we talked about at the beginning. And as we go through and put this into terminology or real words that you understand, I'm going to go back and refer to D about your sources and what you must have in your sources. So let me have you turn that just a bit so that we can see this side as well. Perfect. How many of you have ever in your whole entire life made a chocolate chip cookie? By show of hands. 2 of you. How many of you have now eaten a chocolate chip cookie? Oh, good, the rest of us. Fantastic. Therefore, you can participate in this game. If my speech was, and my thesis read, today, to inform you how to make a chocolate chip cookie, I will first tell you about the ingredients needed, then I'll tell you about how to prepare those ingredients, and finally, I'll talk to you about some baking tricks for this chocolate chip cookie. What is my first main point? Fantastic! Ingredients. Let's outline this together. If you want to flip over your page, you can always write that. So what I am going to do is I am going to start out with my first main point, and I am using a
Roman numeral.
Roman numeral 1, because it's the first one. It's my first main point. And I'm going to write something as simple as ingredients. Yes? No! Go back to letter E. F. E or F? What does it say?
Double space between each symbol.
Oh, what's E?
Everything must be written in full sentences.
Oh my goodness, so is this a full sentence? No, friends! So we must what? We must what? Write this in a?
Full sentence?
Yes! Okay, good! So I will say something like, let's begin by gathering the necessary ingredients. Period. I know that it's a full sentence because it has an ending punctuation mark, it has a capital, it has a verb, it has a noun, right? Also, what is interesting about the way that this sentence is written? If you were writing an English paper, would you write the sentence in the same pattern or using the same type of language or vocabulary? You would typically write in first person, second person, third person.
Third?
Right. In this case, we want to always write our outline, if it's exactly how it's intended to be spoken, and if I was to pass it off to somebody else, you would not want them to speak how we write, because that would sound what? Very awkward to write in a third person when there's a bunch of people sitting in front of you. Thus, we write how we speak. So how you would say it is how you should write it. Good job, everybody. Feel free to say these things back. Okay, so how you would say it is how you would write it. So let's begin by gathering the necessary ingredients. If that's how you would say that to a friend, if you were Rachel Ray on a cooking show, if you had your own cooking show and you were looking at the camera, what would you say? Thou shalt begin by... No. Let's begin by gathering our ingredients. Fantastic. If you have made this cookie before, which I believe you have, let's go ahead and start off with some of these. So what do you think I'm going to lay out in this main point, everybody? The
Ingredients.
Oh my goodness, fantastic. What is an ingredient? Don't give me the good stuff yet. Let's wait on that. But what's an ingredient that we would use?
Dough. No, flour.
Yes! Okay, good, because we have to make that dough, right? Fantastic. So I'm going to put a 1 here to start talking about the flour. Is that correct? Look at your symbolization that you wrote down.
Yes, egg.
It's an A, because it's our first what?
Subpoint.
Also known as our first ingredient, because this is what we are starting out with. So we will put an A here, we'll double space, we'll indent, and we'll say flour.
And then complete.
In a complete sentence. So we would say something like, you will start off with flour. You can put like 2/3 cups or whatever, but we'll start off with flour. What's another ingredient that we can use? Ready? Here comes the next one. Any ingredient will do, except not the good stuff yet. We're making the dough. We're making the dough. What do you think you need?
Egg.
Yes! Fantastic! Okay, great. So I'm going to put a 1 here, and I'm going to say that we'll need eggs. Is this the proper symbol? Why is it?
Wait, no.
Why is it not the proper symbol? I would only use the 1 if I was describing or subording the sentence above it, which is the
Flour.
right. And I'm not supporting the flour, right? I'm talking about an entirely new
Ingredient.
fantastic, which is an egg. Thus, I will use a symbol of what?
B.
Yes! Fantastic! So we will double space, we will put it here, and I will say, You will also need eggs, period. Yay, good. Give me the good stuff that makes it all hopped up in the morning, or at least how I get all hopped up. What is that stuff that you put in sweets and treats and candy?
Sugar.
Awesome. This is another ingredient that we need. But here comes the key about the sugar. For those of you who have made a chocolate chip cookie, you know that how many types do you need? 6, 3, 4, 2. Great. So if I want to talk about my next ingredient, I'm going to go ahead and it's sugar. So I'm going to put a 1 here.
2?
A
No.
2. What's my next symbol going to be for my next ingredient? I would only use a 1. Remind him, if I'm supporting the
Green. So
eggs.
the point.
The eggs, the one before it, right? That's what these symbols do. If they indent, if they follow along the same line, it's representative of the ingredients. I would only use a 1 if I was supporting those eggs. Thus, we're starting a new ingredient all together, and I am going to say to my audience, you will need 2 different types of sugar. What types of sugar do we need? Do you remember? That's okay. I'll give it to you. You need white sugar, and you also need brown sugar. Let's symbolize those, shall we? If I have to write that down, I need a space for it. So I'm talking about the sugar. What symbol do you think I'm going to use to describe the white sugar?
1
Because?
to support the sugar.
Absolutely. So it's an idea that supports the sugar. So I am going to go down here and I'm going to put a 1 because I know that that is the next symbol. Also, it describes a sub-point falling 2 below. So I would use, you will need white sugar. And then, what other type of sugar do we need?
Brown.
Fantastic. So I'm going to put an A here to talk about the brown sugar.
It's going to be 2.
It's going to be 2. Why would it not be an A?
Well, because brown and white are 2 different things. No, it's the same thing, but just different.
They're just different types of sugar. You're correct. But I would only use the A if I was describing the
White sugar.
And I'm not describing the white sugar. I could say C and H is the best white sugar that there is, if I wanted to talk about the sugar. But I don't feel like I need to talk to you about sugar because I know my audience. They're pretty familiar with what sugar is. I don't need to go into any more detail at this point. Thus, I do use another number. You will also need brown sugar. Is this making sense to you thus far? Fantastic. And now we start to see our framework. We know what ideas are supporting. We're laying out our concepts. We can see our pattern of indentation to allow us to know, again, what falls below and above each other. Sound good? All right, let's move on. So if you don't mind, maybe moving it over here. There we go. Fantastic. Tell me that good ingredient that we all look forward to in a chocolate chip cookie. It's the creme de la creme. It's the essence of the cookie.
Chocolate chips.
Yes, fantastic. Let's use that. So what symbol are we going to use to describe those chocolate chips? It's a
D.
Yes, because it's a
Ingredient.
D. Fantastic. So we will say D. And I will say something fun like, don't forget the chocolate chips! Exclamation point. Let's talk about some chips. What types of chips do you all like? Any brand? Make one up.
Hershey's?
Fantastic! Let's write that. So I'm going to use E to describe a Hershey chocolate chip. Is this correct?
No.
If I'm describing a chocolate chip, what am I going to use?
A 1?
A 1! Fantastic! So I'm going to indent, and this will know that now we're talking about the chip itself. Don't forget the chocolate chip. You could say, Hershey's chips are good to use. What other types of chips? Any other brand you all like? That you heard of? That you know about? Nestle? Good! Fantastic. Where I'm going to put an A here to describe the Nestle chip?
No.
Why would I not use an A? Because I'm not describing the?
Hershey.
Absolutely. I would only use an A if I was describing the Hershey. Thus, it's a new type of chip. Therefore, I will use the symbol of
2.
fantastic. So I'll use a 2 here, and I will say Nestle semi-sweet chips are also good. But my personal favorite that I'm going to tell you a little bit about is something here. Goes below 3. It says Gira deli chips are my favorite chip to use. Is it a personal opinion? Yes. Who doesn't love a personal story inside your speech? Shows you're a little bit of an expert. Is it persuading me to use them? No, because that's not the purpose of this speech. We see that written in your introduction, that it's an informative speech. This is where I would like to get into the concepts that are listed in letter D. Here is where I could maybe build in a little support for my speech. In your informative speech, you are required to have at least 3 outside sources that are supportive of the claims that you are making. These outside sources we will go over in detail in class, but they are things like maybe a book, a magazine, a journal article, a newspaper article, a website. Reliable and well-reviewed sources that are credible will be accepted in this class. And we'll go over that in detail when we get to research and supporting material. But for now, your job is to go through this research and find another individual who has written about your topic so that you can take supporting materials. What are those? Examples, stories, maybe testimonies, statistics that other individuals have used before or have suggested before or who have talked about it before, and use it as support to the claims that you make in your speech. You do this all the time in English, correct? You use a citation or a quote from somewhere else, and you use this as a backup or explanation to the idea that you are making. In your presentation, it not only is going to build the credibility of the speech itself, make it more believable, give it a little bit more validity, give it some type of depth that goes beyond your own ideas. But in addition, when we utilize outside sources, to the audience, what does that communicate? That you have done what?
Research.
You have done your research. You have done the work. And thus, it's going to build your own personal credibility. Awesome. Fantastic. So what we will do then is build in some types of citations or concepts from other people. So how do we do that in speaking? We're probably very familiar with how to do it in writing, and it's similar in its approach. approach when we write. But there are 3 places that you are going to need to make note of this research. And in the outline, each of these places that you make note will be graded, but they're graded because they are necessary for the purpose of who? The audience. Good, because that's who we're trying to talk to. That's who we're conveying our information to. They're the reason that we open our mouth. You already know about this information. So it's for the purpose of the audience. It says here on D, if you look at it, you must cite your sources inside your outline, out loud in your speech, and in a works cited page attached to the back of your outline. The following elements must be heard in your speech when you cite outside sources. So let's look at these concepts and let me put them into the work for you. If you are going through and doing your research, you should ideally be able to find the following 5 elements: the author, the author's title, a publication, the article title, and the year. All of those are necessary to make a citation in a works cited page already. However, what we know with the rise of technology and the changing vehicles that we have for retrieving information, not all of this information is always easily accessible to you or even able to find altogether. For example, if you're using a New York Times article, they oftentimes will not list the name of the author, and thus we don't have an author to present to our audience. I, as a reader, can see that reflected in your works cited page. And so you may not have all 5 points up front. Also, like a website, how many of you know who writes your websites? It's like Nike.com. Do they have a little list of the person who wrote that small paragraph? No. Very rarely will they have that unless it's some type of online blog or newspaper or magazine where it will give credit to the individual author. So sometimes we can't find the detailed information here. Ideally, we would love to have all of it, but let me show you exactly how this will look when we use it in the presentation. If I want to talk about these girdling chips, what symbol am I going to use? That's right, everybody. It's a number, and now we need to support it, so we're going to use a letter. A big capital letter? No, because those indicate our sub-ones, right? So we need a
Lowercase.
A lowercase letter, absolutely. So we'll start off with A. What I'm going to say about these Ghirardelli chips is don't take my word on the chip use. Something like that. Don't take my word on the chip use. Now, this sets us up letting you know whose word are we going to give? Maybe somebody else's, right? So if I'm going to now give somebody else's word, I can, again, indent. I'll use a number because I know this concept is going to support the idea above it. And I can start to write out my information. I can say something like, let's go back to this. Rachel Ray wrote an article titled, "Which chip in this month's Better Homes and Gardens magazine that stated, quote, Ghirardelli chips are by far the best to cook with, and eat, end quote. What have we done here? Let's look. What elements were we able to add? So who's Rachel Ray? That is our, on the sheet, what did we have? That's the author. We also have the article title, which is?
Which chip?
Which chip? This month communicates our date, or the year that's written in there. Better Homes and Gardens magazine is the publication. Fantastic. So what are we missing? Who is Rachel Ray? And why should I care about what she's saying? This is the author's title, and it is something that people forget all the time. It is the most important element because we say something like, John Smith says to get your heart checked. And you're like, who's John Smith? And what does he know about my heart? And then your audience, you can say something different. You can say, John Smith, head of cardiology at UCLA Medical Center, suggests that students between the age of, quote, 15 to 23 get their heart checked every year, end quote. You're like, shoot, I need to what? Go get my heart checked. Because that guy is an expert. He knows what he's talking about. Give credit where credit is due. It's going to build your credibility, and it's going to show that you've given them the most credible research that is possible by adding in that author's title. So that's the one element that we didn't have here. According to MLA standards, if I have already cited all this information up front, there isn't a need to do a parenthetical citation at the end. However, if I am using a source that I've already used before, and I want to say something like, in that same Rachel Ray article, she stated that, quote, ghirardelli chips melt deliciously and bake perfectly, end quote. Now I would need to put some type of parenthetical citation at the end to allow my audience to know where this information came from. This allows the reader who is going back to read your work to understand where your knowledge and information comes from. Thus, for MLA standards, what do we use? We use the writer's what? Last name and
Page number?
page number. Fantastic. So that's what you would do. You would say, you would put in this parenthetical place, Ray 23. Does that make sense to y'all? Fantastic. So this is what we need to do for the writing portion. When we say this out loud, it is important to read your quotations. Why? You didn't write them. This is the one place where you can read. You can indicate to the audience that you are going to read something to them if you would like to. This lets them know that if they'd like to write down the citation information as you are going through it, because they don't have the paper in front of them, let's say they need to go do more research on your topic after, it helps for them to hear. I'm going to read you a quote, and then you can say, Rachel Ray, right? So we can let them know that something's coming. I'm going to let you know about some information from somewhere else, however you want to say it, but you can indicate that to them here. I'll read you, or I'll give you information, or I'll give you outside notes. Does that make sense? So that your audience knows to perk up and to listen to the information you need to give. Is this clear to everybody? If you have a quotation that is longer than one sentence, this is the exception to the rule on symbolization. Because that person's idea is one concept for you, you put the entire quote on one symbol, even if it has multiple sentences within it. Does that make sense? Okay, great. So does this pattern or format make sense to us in regards to the preparation outline and how you need to symbolize, indent, write in full sentences and what you would be able to put in there? And do you see how when we put it into real words and language, it flows below each other and above each other? I encourage each of you, if this is a bit confusing, you can always write your main points out in paragraph form, as you're used to. Once you do that, you can go through, and every time you see a punctuation mark, double space and ask yourself, does this sentence describe the one above, or is it a new idea altogether? And that will help you see where your symbols need to go. Does that make sense? All right. Let me take you over to the last idea real quick. The last thing I want to tell you about is your speaker's outline. This outline is for you. It will never be seen by me. It is the one page, front and back, that you are allowed to bring into our classroom to allow you to deliver this speech, not only extemporaneously, but also to have your notes of what you want to talk about in your back pocket. Remember, we never have to worry about forgetting what we're going to say because we have the information there. So let's take a look at what a speaker's outline is. A speaker's outline, by definition, if you want to write it in a little note, is key words and phrases that jog the speaker's memory. So it's an outline that is key words and phrases that jog the speaker's memory. Let me show you what your outline should look like. It's going to have this first one. And this is what your speaker's outline would look like. If you need to, you can. The first note that we want you to know, or that I want you to note, is that you're going to follow the same framework as you used in the preparation outline. Same symbols, same indentation. Make sure your outline is legible if you're handwriting it. You can always use a different font for your own outline because 12 points may not be big enough for you if you're using a podium and stepping back. This outline should be one page front and back. Keep the outline as brief as possible. There should be no full sentences except for your quotations because you are going to read those, so have that up for yourself. And the last thing to do is give yourself delivery cues. We spoke a little bit about this before, but delivery cues can be reminders to you about your delivery style. Things like smile, breathe, show, visual. I can't tell you how many times people get to the end of the speech and they're like, oh, I forgot to show my visual aid. Can I show it? And it's like, no. Write it in your speaker's outline because now it doesn't have a purpose if you just show it at the end. It should be reminded to you. These can be helpful tricks and hints for you to increase your delivery should you need it to. Let us go through this, however, and together, each of you, I want you to go through this speech for me. So turn over your papers so that you're not looking at the outline that we wrote. Look at the format, not that one. Ready? Let's look at this. Give me the first point.
Ingredients.
Is that how you would talk in a speech? Say it how we would be delivering it. Here we go. First point.
Let's start off by talking about the ingredients.
Great. Go ahead.
You will need flour. You will also need eggs.
Ah!
You will also need sugar.
Mm-hmm. We're here.
One of ingredients will be white sugar. Another type of sugar like you can use is brown sugar.
Fantastic. Let's come over here. And this one would be?
You will need chocolate chips.
Oh, great. Oh, don't forget that. You will need chocolate chips. Feel free to follow your punctuation. And then we say something like?
Hershey's is one of chocolate chip we will use.
Okay.
You could also use Nestle chocolate chips.
Fantastic.
Wait, how do you say that?
Ghirardelli.
Ghirardelli is one of the chocolate chips they can use.
And it's your what?
And it's one of my favorites.
Awesome. So if you didn't say that, remember, because that sets that up. And then we say,
Don't take my word for it.
fantastic. And then you say something like, I'm going to read you a quote. Great. And then you say,
Richard Ray wrote an article.
fantastic. And this time, how many of you needed to stare at the paper that we wrote? None of you. How many of you stuck to the exact script as it was intended and it was written down? Not one of you. Thus, you know that you were able to deliver this with only these keywords and phrases because you had what? Written it. And you what? Prepared it. And you gave yourself that freedom to not have to be addicted to the paper. That's what a speaker's outline does. And that's how simple it should be and how easy it can be for you. So make sure that we are including these elements in your speakers and your preparation outline, that you have hit the criteria that is listed on the paper, not only for the purpose of getting your points, but for making your outline work for you in the area of both organization, to see what elements need support, to maybe see what ideas need additional detail, but also for you to be able to deliver us in an extemporaneous manner so that we can see your personality, so that you can naturally deliver to us. That's what this outline's purpose is, and what the speaker's outline's purpose is. Does that make sense to you all? All right, fantastic. When we go over supporting materials is when we'll talk about how to make that citation page at the end for you, but otherwise so that you know in the outline how to say it as well as how to write it. Sound good? Yay. Okay, great. Give yourself a big round of applause. You really nailed it today, everybody. Way to go. Way to